As people of God, we must always be mindful of the fact that his plan for our life may not always be easy. I want you to get that. I was sitting down and said, Lord, how am I going to approach this thing today? And my son Bert came to go out to lunch. He said, Dad, we ready to go? I said, well, no, I'm trying to drop this line down while the Holy Ghost is speaking to me. And as he spoke to me, he said, as people of God, we must always be mindful of the fact that his plan, God's plan for our life may not always be easy. His yoke is easy, but there's nothing to say that his plan is easy. Sometimes God's plans for our life will cause us to experience some difficult times. We must thoroughly understand that God's way is a way of suffering. Now, we want to shout and jump, but hey, too often we hear people speak of God's way in light of prosperity and gain. They fail to remind us that with all that we may gain following Christ, we will also encounter suffering and persecution for his sake. There is no free ride. Come on, there is no free ride. One of the most discouraging times in our life is the time when we are putting forth our best effort to do what we believe God has told us to do, and we come under attack. How many of y'all find it a hard time? Or times that God has shown us our purpose and divine destiny, and we come under undue criticism when revealing it to others. Times when we feel that we have finally gotten things together and going in the direction that we want, the bottom falls out. It is always difficult to understand why God does not make the way easy, removing all hindrances and protect us from the attacks. We often struggle with the concept, all they who live godly shall suffer persecution. We have a problem with it because we cannot understand if I'm walking upright, if I'm praying, if I'm doing right. See, I can expect some trouble to come when I'm half-stepping and doing some crooked mess and the folk in the street say shucking and jiving. But what about the time when I've made up my mind to live right and have no junk attached to me, nobody talking to me, no stuff in my life, no junk in my trunk. And I come to the realization that I'm suffering. I'm going through something. What's happening when you suffer for righteousness' sake? Come on in here, somebody. And many of us have to deal with that because as a believer, as a Christian, we suffer not because we've done wrong, but we suffer for righteousness' sake. We suffer because we deny the will of the flesh. We suffer because we tell our flesh, these things you will not partake of because this is out of the will of God. This offends God. This brings hurt and grief to the heart of God. So we will not partake of this because this is not the will of God for us. And therefore we deny ourselves. The Bible tells us that anybody who comes after him, the first requirement is he must deny himself. And then he must take up his cross and follow Jesus. So tell somebody, this is a suffering way. And ready or not, you will suffer if you live godly. Nobody wants to talk to me. Come on, say ready or not, you will suffer if you live godly. Are you with me here now? Now, not only so, but there is a lesson that all believers must learn. And the lesson teaches us to hold our peace and share with no one what God has given us for our personal information and encouragement. You got to realize that every time God speaks to you, it's not for you to make public broadcasts and public announcement as to what God has told you, especially concerning you. Some of us want to go out, I know what I'm going to do. The Lord told me. Sometimes you set yourself up. Y'all don't want to talk to me. You set yourself up for disaster when you run your mouth too much. You got to know how to hold your peace. The Bible said when the angel came to Mary and told her what she was going to be doing, the Bible said she held these things and pondered them in her heart. There are some things you can't tell. Had she told anybody that she was impregnated by an angel, they would have killed her. But she had to keep her mouth shut and wait for God to bring about the manifestation of what he told her. Don't you know some things are for your information only? Sometimes God give you pronunciation of what something because he wants you to know, I'm going to bless you. But you got to know how to hold your peace and not be so anxious to tell everybody all that God has told you for you. We will quickly learn that people are not always happy about what God has shown us concerning our promotion and future. Everybody's not excited about you going out. There are those among us who have not been granted favor as we have, and their hearts are filled with jealousy and animosity. Saints, we must realize that there is a pit awaiting all of us. Now, as horrible as this thought may be, it is a common reality for those who will do a work for God. There's a pit waiting for you if you say yes to God. We need to stop telling folks, get saved and all your troubles over, because that's not so. Get saved and you're getting ready to get a kick. Get saved and the devil's going to fight you. Get yourself right with God and the enemy. Your adversary, the devil, is a roaring lion. If you're not ready to endure persecution and suffering, my God, you are going to have a rude awakening. Joseph had absolutely no idea that his brethren were so enraged against him. Sometimes you're sitting right in the midst of folk in church folk, and don't realize how upset with you some church folk are. And I guess I get on the side. You have some church folks sitting up in church, shouting, shaking, and jerking, and tongue speaking, and foot skipping, upset with you and don't like you and have no reason to put you through the level of criticism that you're going through with, just simply because they don't like you. Being the son born to his father in his old age, Joseph was considered to have been Jacob's favorite. The other 11 brothers were born of two separate mothers, and they were not looked upon with such favor. Joseph, being Jacob's choice, wore a coat of many colors that his father made especially for him. Another thing you have to watch out is when God started blessing you, he also started opening up avenues for you that's different from what other folk have. Have you ever seen yourself amongst the crowd and all of a sudden God separates you from the crowd and start doing some stuff in your life that the rest of them not yet getting done? You don't be careful, the telephone will stop ringing. You'll get no more invitation out till lunch. Oh, no, don't talk to me. They don't come to see you no more. They don't talk to you no more. They just leave you, drop you like a hot potato because they have seen something happening with you. A transition has taken place. And they're saying, well, I don't know what he think he is now. I remember when he used to act like he couldn't live without me. Now all of a sudden But you got to realize that sometimes folk, and don't get upset when folks start giving you the cold shoulder and the long handle spoon stuff if you're walking in righteousness. And if you're doing some stuff that's not right, then you're suffering justly. But the Bible said, think it not strange when you're called to go through fiery trials. You are going to have the trying of your faith. You're going to have the trial of your patience. Ooh, help me, Holy Ghost. See, it's one thing to have the trying of your patience, but it's another thing to have your faith, but it's another thing to have the trying of your patience. You see, the trial of your faith is what helps you to keep on believing God. But the trying of your patience is what talks about your ability to keep hanging on in there. Some stuff comes to see if you have what it takes to hold on. Look at somebody and say, you got to hold on. And regardless of how things look and how things do and how things go, you got to hold on. And I don't know how much you testify how saved you are and how much Holy Ghost is abiding in your soul. If you don't have the tenacity, spiritual tenacity to keep on keeping on in spite of opposition, in spite of the transition, in spite of persecution, sometimes it is the trying of your patience. Tell somebody, it's the trying of your patience. Anybody here ever had your patience tried? Oh, but I heard the Lord say, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. When your patience is being tried, you got to know how to wait on the Lord. You got to notice here with me that these other brothers, these other 11 brothers, having two separate mothers, had no testimony of their faith in God. They were angry. They were disenfranchised. They were bitter. They were out of the circle. They had no reason to be bitter like that. They could have been included as others, but because they were looking at the blessings in someone else,